First, I'd like to give a shout out to Ashton Lewis for sending me the story that's coming from Atlanta Black Star. Now, this is just a stock image. This is not of an actual family. It could be, though, of them actually homeschooling their children, but then again, it could be just for advertisement. But it does go with the story, where it says homeschooling is on the rise due to lack of black history, a major driver among African Americans. Loving it already. Let me go ahead and read this article. A new wave of learning is taking off across the South as an increasing number of African Americans are choosing to homeschool their kids in lieu of the wanting and often whitewashed curriculum taught in public schools. The National Homeschooling Research Institute estimates that nearly 220,000 African American children are homeschooled in the U.S. The lack of focus on African American history, as well as the disproportionate disciplining of black students, are big drivers for black parents who homeschool. If you look at what happens in public schools in terms of the curriculum, you could end up thinking African American history began with slavery and ended with Martin Luther King. University of Georgia education professor Cheryl Fields Smith told NBC News, and that is just not the case. Fed up with the school system, Mama Shiva Quinn quit her job and started teaching her kids on her own. Quinn, an Air Force veteran, said she wanted her daughters to go farther in their reading and writing, but the teachers just weren't hearing her. She plans to homeschool her girls until it's time for college. I wanted them to have a solid foundation in African American history, and I wanted them to be very good readers. There were all these missing pieces and gaps I need to fill in. For some, like Phil Smith, the popularity of homeschooling among black Americans had become a form of resistance or protest. The associate professor pointed to the excessive and oftentimes harsher punishment faced by black students compared to white students when they mess up in school. According to a University of Pennsylvania study, black students make up 37% of the public school population in Georgia, yet account for 67% of the students who get suspended. The numbers are higher in the South, Phil Smith said. A lot of institutional policies, such as zero tolerance policies and the way we handle discipline, contribute to a sense of a child feeling like a troublemaker. Love this story. However, I will say make sure you watch out for those loopholes, because I remember it was a story that I covered about 2 years ago about a black mother in New York who was homeschooling her kids, and everything she thought was going great. You know, her kids were getting the proper education. Everything was fine with the schools until they came and knocked on her door and served her an arrest warrant for child neglect, saying that she did not have her kids in school, even though she had all the proper forms signed. But then they said it was some kind of loophole in the documents, and then they put her in jail, and I forgot what happened to her kids. I think she's out now. She has her kids back, but it was a mess. It was a big mess. Some of y'all probably remember when I talked about that story, or if you weren't around at the time when I talked about it, you probably have heard about it, but it was a big mess. They will make sure to try to find a way that black students or black children and their parents do not successfully go through the homeschooling phase. I remember when I first learned about homeschooling years ago, I think I was in high school at the time, and most of the kids that were homeschooled were by white parents. I never came across a black parent that homeschooled their child. And I used to always think that kids who were homeschooled were weird, or they were more introverted instead of extroverted. And I was like, how do y'all communicate? Like, how do y'all deal with outside life? Because you're home all day. And they would break it down that, you know, they would have their regular courses and everything like that, and then they would teach them extra stuff that they wouldn't teach them in school, but they still were social outside of that. And that was when I got my first glimpse into the homeschooling lifestyle, but it was only through Caucasians. You never found any black people that engaged with homeschooling until more recently. And I think now is a good time as ever to do the whole homeschooling thing, especially because technology has advanced so much. Like I said, when I first learned about homeschooling, that was back when I was in high school, and I've been out of high school since 2007, and it was before '07 when I learned about it. It was probably around '05, maybe '04 or around that time. So technology has changed a whole lot. So, and one of the best things that you could also probably do is talk to other black people who do homeschooling as well, because some of them do like a group homeschooling thing. So if you as a parent cannot afford to do the homeschooling because you work, you can send your child to another parent who does it full time, and you can engage with those other kids and with them, and it feels more like a classroom setting. because it was another story I talked about. I think it was last year or the year before as well, where it was these individuals who came together as a small community, and they sent their kids to be taught by this husband and his wife, the basic, read, write, math, arithmetic, all of that. But they also taught them, African American studies the way it should be taught. And it was another story that happened in Florida where you had the single dad who did the same thing with his 3 children. So there's plenty of stories out there where you have black people who are homeschooling. I think the biggest shock to me was finding out that this number was 220,000, because I wasn't expecting it to be even that high, but that's a pretty high number considering the black population. But I would like for it to be higher. And I definitely think that if people educate themselves on how the homeschooling process works, I definitely think that it's obtainable for it to actually happen, considering how the public school system is pretty shitty lately, and the stuff that they put in these history books about us in particular, talking about slavery was let Kanye tell it, slavery was a choice, and we just came over here willingly, and Lincoln freed the slave, the usual stuff that they like to put out there. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. The link to the article, email, PayPal, and Patreon will be in the description. I'll talk to you in the next one.